Rhetoric is a funny one and part of the propaganda that is central to Russia's current campaign against Ukraine. And it is odd because the news about the reopening of the grain corridor from Ukraine down through the Bosphorus and the Marmara Sea into the Mediterranean, the news about this came through Turkey. And yet, the BBC and Reuters both published information which suggested that the reopening of the corridor was dependent on a statement from Kyiv that they were no longer going to use the corridor as a base for targeting Russian shipping. What now comes out is that Russia is still keen to get that reassurance. So it's certainly not clear that that reassurance, that written reassurance, has been given, though it has been brokered and has been accepted as a given by the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, who spoke first to President Putin and then to President Zelensky and then to Mr. Biden. And he didn't give details until after he'd spoken to Biden, and yet Reuters and the BBC were already peddling the story, which presumably had only come from Russian propaganda. And I find that disappointing. Disappointing. However, it is good that the corridor is open. We now know that part of the mission of that corridor is to ensure that the grain goes to poorer countries, particularly in Africa and Syria and so on, and that that it is specifically disencouraging grain going to European countries and richer countries, which is as it should be. And this may help a lot, particularly if Europe gets behind this initiative, Europe and America get fully behind this initiative, then maybe the optics can be improved, because the stories that a lot of the grain that had been coming out of Ukraine was being bought in Europe, that's disappointing, given the rhetoric that the West put forward for reopening that grain corridor in the first place. I think Mr. Erdogan's position is greatly enhanced by his brokering this deal, and maybe this is a way forward. His plan was that this would start talks, peace talks, between Russia and Ukraine, and that seems to be quietly forgotten in the latest summaries of the agreement. So I suspect that is something that he hasn't yet achieved. So instead of that, what is being emphasized is the need to get this grain to poorer countries.